r/AskReddit. People of Reddit, what is your weirdest paranormal experience? In 1998 I was walking home from a late night library study session and there were 4 very large shiny deep gold things in the sky. They were twirling downward like those seed pod things on trees that sort of helicopter themselves, except these were bigger than cars and were doing it very slowly. I had stopped and was staring up at them before I even realized it. Then I noticed that about 20 people were standing on the other side of the road. They had come out of a bar. There was only the bar, several houses, and a bridge, but that was basically it. These days I would never let my daughter walk home like that, but whatever. I thought it was safe. I hollered something along the lines of, "What is that?" And one of the people said she thought it was spaceships, but I knew that wasn't right, and I went home and told people who thought I was probably crazy. A few years later, when I was older and understood the internet more, I looked for any kind of news story or anything, and nothing was available. I wish for the life of me I had talked more to the people watching the same thing outside the bar, which Google tells me is now gone, but I was more afraid of them than whatever was in the sky. It was bizarre. In the intervening 20 plus years I haven't gone crazy or ever seen anything like it again, lol. I used to work events at a historic home. It was well known that the place was thought to be haunted and everyone had their own stories. I never believed any of it until one night I was the last one in the house because I was locking up after a particularly late wedding, probably around 1 AM. I went up to the top floor and the second I crossed the threshold I felt the air change. It got almost dense and knocked the breath out of me. I booked it out as fast as I possibly could. Another coworker said one night when she went up to do the same thing around the same time she clearly heard footsteps and assumed it was another coworker coming up to join her, but when she turned around no one was there and the other coworker had actually been far across the property at the time. Another person said they were walking down the corridor when the door they were about to go through slammed shut in front of them and locked. The facilities guy was absolutely positive the original owners of the home, from the 1800s, were doing the haunting, so he started playing classical music at night if he had to be there late to appease them, and claimed they started leaving him alone after that. Nothing too crazy ever happened to anyone, but man did it make you not want to be the last person in there at night. I don't really believe in paranormal, but if anything I've experienced was paranormal, it was this. I wouldn't say if it's weird, but as a non-ghost believer, it was weird for me to experience. My grandfather passed away earlier this year, around mid-May. He and I were really close. When I was little, he would walk me to school, push me on the swing while he sang, and did anything a little girl could ask from her grandpa. We lost that connection when he developed dementia in my later teens, and we had little choice but to move him out of our house into a place that could offer him 24-hour care. So I wasn't in the area when he passed, but my dad was with him. That call was hard to receive. His funeral was early one morning. That evening I was sitting in my room just thinking, when I decided to go out into our deck and just be in the silence. We have 2 rocking chairs out there. I went outside and sat in one, and immediately the chair beside me rocked like someone has sat in that one as well. I watched it for a bit, wondering if I was just seeing things. And when the chair fell still I shrugged it off and started rocking. A few minutes later, the second rocking chair started rocking beside mine. I would pause, and after a few seconds it would also stop rocking. I thought it was the movement of my rocking that caused the other chair to rock, and even now I wonder if that's really what happened. But what happened next made me doubt that. My grandpa loved when I sang or played an instrument for him. In the early stages of his dementia, what really got him to smile was the ukulele. So when I brought one home from Hawaii I played and sang for him, and he would grin and clap at the end of every song. So that night, I don't know where it came from, but I got an urge to play the ukulele outside. I hadn't played in months at that point. I went inside, grabbed my ukulele, and sat back down in my rocking chair and began to play and sing quietly. I felt kind of stupid until the other rocking chair began to rock ever so slowly, and my chair was not moving at that point. It rocked for a bit then stopped, but I kept playing. I strummed for a while, and when I was done I sat there in silence for a few minutes, said goodbye to whatever was in the chair, and went inside. I'm still skeptical of this situation. I don't know if the rocking was complete coincidence, or if something really was sitting next to me that night. I've sat in that rocking chair dozens of times since then, but the other one has not moved on its own. My brain says it was nothing, but my gut tells me that it was my grandpa listening to me one last time before our final goodbye. I miss that man, and every time I pick up my ukulele I think of him and that night. Went running with my dog and saw a white outline of a young woman running alongside me out of the corner of my eye. When I looked over, nothing. About 5 minutes later I got a call that my great grandmother had passed. She was in hospice. Still think about that a lot. Edit. I think it runs in the family. My mom will straight up say I need to call X. I feel weird and sure as shit there's a disease/illness going on. My great grandmother used to talk to dead people and my family thought she was crazy until they figured out the house she used to live in was owned by the couple she talked to years earlier. Found this out a year or so ago. Been about 5 years since she passed away. Yes, this happens to me and happened to my mother a lot. I will start thinking about someone, or I should say, someone pops into my mind and I know somehow they are going to reach out to me. And they do. More than that, I grew up in a funeral home which was a 3-story Victorian house. We lived in the top 2 stories and the main floor was the business. That house was alive. Our dogs would do weird things like stare and growl into corners, usually around the holidays. We thought it was our grandpa coming for another worldly visit, but who knows. My mom swears up and down that the foot of her bed would depress, as if someone sat down on it, but no one was there. She would feel a presence, would even talk to it, and eventually she would say, "Alright, I'm going to go to bed now. Please leave." And the depression would disappear like someone stood up to leave. My brother said he saw footprints appear in the dirt floor of the basement once, and he always teased me and scoffed at my fear of weird ghostiness. So when he admitted it all spooked, we all freaked a little. One night we were all awakened by blaring music. My dad had a pair of these huge 5 feet Klipsch corner speakers, and in the middle of the night, we all ran out of our rooms confused. Somehow, the stereo turned on and blasted on maximum volume. My dad is an audiophile and would never have abused his equipment for fear of blowing the speakers, nor was anyone awake to turn on the stereo and turn it up. Every light was on in the house despite having turned them out before going to bed. Also, the thermostat would randomly get turned up to the 90s, and you know how dads are with the thermostat. He always blamed my brother and me, but we didn't do it. I think our ghosts were practical jokers. There may have been at least one kid, and I say that because the house/funeral home was turned into an apartment building. When my parents sold it, I knew a girl who lived there. She would babysit sometimes, and the kid she babysat was always playing with someone whom nobody else could see. Also, she heard a disembodied kid voice once, clear as a ringing bell. It announced, "It's raining." At that time there were no kids anywhere in the building. What was weird is that there was this really old child's coffin in the basement. Not sure why they kept it. Probably because it was a novelty. It was made of dark wood, but the front panel was a solid pane of glass, so you could view the body, but seal the child inside. I realize this all sounds like made up bullshit, but I kid you not, this was my childhood. Now I drink and smoke enough that spirits can't reach me. I had a similar experience to the blaring music. It was actually one of a few paranormal experiences that we experienced in our home coincidentally after my older sister and her friends brought in a Ouija board to experiment with. Although I'm 23 now, it was a night that occurred while I was in the 1st grade that I will never forget, right down to the date and time. I woke up at exactly midnight on April 2nd of 2002, sleeping next to my mother as my parents were going through a divorce at the time and I didn't like sleeping alone. When I woke up, there was an ominous presence in the room. I jolted awake and immediately felt on edge, like something bad was about to happen. However, my mom was still sleeping peacefully beside me, so I tried to just drift back to sleep. Several minutes went by, and I just couldn't shake that nervous feeling. Although I was laying there in silence, my mom suddenly woke up, turned to me, and immediately asked if I was okay, because something didn't seem right. Within about 90 seconds, organ music, like what you would hear at a funeral, started blaring throughout our home, to the point where things were rattling. It lasted for what felt like forever, but probably was only about 1 to 2 minutes. There was no one else living with us, no pets, no neighbors close by, and no surround sound / stereo system to even carry music throughout the house. To this day, we both still remember it vividly and have absolutely zero explanation for any of it. My little sister is kind of weird. She's always had medium characteristics, and weird ghost stuff has always kinda happened to / around her. My mom, sister, who is 5 years younger than me, and me lived in this creepy older duplex that was a church before it was converted. Go figure. My sister started talking to this imaginary friend Alet, and started to talk about her friend more and more. I was around 15 to 16 and started to go through my hoodlum phase. I had just started smoking weed regularly, so I didn't really pay much mind to my sister. My mom was always at work because she was a single mom, so it was always just my sister and I at the house. Well, for a couple of days my sister started acting really weird, as if she wasn't herself in a way. She started sharing stories about her and her imaginary friend, and then she told us that her imaginary friend, whose name was Rosie. I honestly hate even saying or thinking about the name because of the freaky shit I had to go through because of her / it, wanted her to get into this bottom drawer in our kitchen. Which was weird, because I had previously broke that drawer. I broke the tracts that you slide it in and out on, so to fix it, I just screwed the face of the drawer in on each corner without the other parts. Tracts, or the bucket part that holds things. Lol, I'm not sure what it's called. I explained this to my sister, but she didn't want to hear it. She needed to get into the drawer. I just ignored it until one day, when we were alone, I came out of my room, and she was just sitting on the ground in front of the drawer, staring at it. It freaked me out cause she just seemed blank. When I talked to her, I legit started thinking she might go crazy and kill me or something. But to attempt to stop her from being weird, I obliged and went and got the drill and opened up the drawer. To my surprise, there was stuff in it, which freaked me out because, like I said, I was the one who broke it and I was the one who closed it. There was nothing in the hole when I shut it. When I took out the stuff to look at it, it was 2 birthday cards. One to Rosie, my sister's imaginary friend, and one to Rosie's little brother. They were both dated like 30 years before. I was terrified and called and told my mom. My sister was completely normal after that. I'm not really sure why Rosie waned us to find them, but we did, and she was content, I guess. My sister explained to me later on that Rosie told her that both Rosie and her little brother had died in that house, or possibly when it was a church. There is a lot more to all of this, but I wanted to share the beginning of it all first to see if anyone is even interested. I will share more if anyone wants to hear more. My memory of all of this is a little splotchy, so bear with me. Also, I apologize for the horrible formatting and grammar. I'm at work and I wanted to make this quick, but it has taken me a little longer to type all of this up than I anticipated. Edit. I realize that the part 2 is messed up and lost into the abyss. Once I'm at my laptop tomorrow, I will fix it and let everyone know. Hopefully it will work. I have been on mobile trying to fix the link. I'm not sure why it's so messed up, but holy shit, this thread is a mess. Lol. I suck at this. I apologize, everyone. I grew up on the Navajo reservation, a white boy. Parents were teachers. My parents moved to California at the end of my junior year, and I was sure as shit not going to spend my last year of high school somewhere else. One of my good friends talked to his parents about my situation, looking for a place to stay, and they invited me to stay with them. They lived in a hogan, traditional Navajo dwelling, about 9 to 10 miles away from town. The nearest neighbor was about 3 miles away. My friend's father was a coal miner for Peabody Coal up on Black Mesa, and my friend's mother was a shepherd who had a flock of around 200 plus head. So, in order to earn my keep with the family, I herded the sheep on the weekends, taking them to graze. I would stay the night out with them if we were too far from the hogan, a regular occurrence. Me, the sheep, a border collie and a dingo mix, out in the desert, 150 miles away from the nearest city, and the sky is so dark the Milky Way looked like someone threw powdered sugar into the sky and it stuck. Growing up around the Navajo culture and all my friends being Navajo, I got to know their superstitions, which by proximity became mine too. Don't touch the personal belongings of dead people. Don't ever respond to a skinwalker. Stay away from Susie on the hill. She's a murderous witch. Go see Tule Grayers if you have a disturbing dream. Never ever step onto Navajo burial grounds. Not only will you be cursed, if you're seen there, you will be shot and buried out in the desert. When alone in the desert at night, a lot of these superstitions would haunt me. I was always alert for the sound of a skinwalker or yibiche. One day, I went to the trading post to get some candy or something. On either side of the entrance, there were benches where the elders would shoot the shit or say hi to friends that they haven't seen in a while. That day, walking in, I caught a snippet of a conversation about a woman's herd that had been attacked one night. 4 or 5 sheep, according to her, were ripped apart, like they had exploded from the inside. I went in and got my stuff, came back out and listened. The woman whose sheep this happened to was sitting right next to me. She said that the next day, she and her husband walked around the exploded sheep area and they had discovered dog tracks. The tracks were 3x the size of a large dog print, and they said that it was walking around on its hind legs. I thought skinwalker till one of them said man dog, kind of like a skinwalker, but then I realized that they were talking about a werewolf. When I saw my friend that I was living with, I told him about the conversation I heard at the trading post. He said, those old timers are crazy. They've been alone out in the desert too long. You start to see and hear things that aren't there. But when we got home, over dinner, mutton stew and fry bread, I brought up the conversation I had heard at the trading post. My friend's mom immediately asked, who said this? I told her that I didn't know her name, but I described what she was wearing. Jewelry, the colors of her velvet skirt and shirt, the way her bun was tied. My friend's mom knew who she was and said that she had grazing rights in an area about 5 miles away from us. It's usually frowned upon talking about these sort of things, but my friend's mom told us that when she was a little girl, a dog man had been making rounds, killing sheep from different herds all around the area, out to about 50 miles away. Mexican hat, and that the Navajos in the area were terrified and armed. She claimed to have actually seen it one night, attacking a sheep. She said that when it was done, it called out her name and she ran as fast as she could to get home, all the while it kept pace with her, calling out her name and laughing. There was no bullshit with this woman. I did and still do believe her story. So, from then on, whoever was shepherding the flock was armed with a rifle. Pretty much everyone on the res is a crack shot. I never saw it, but when I graduated and left the res, more sheep were being attacked, and it was happening more frequently. I spent many sleepless nights out in the desert with the flock, scared out of my wits. Love these questions. This story is true to my own experience. One night I was in my room playing video games. I turned my games off and went to lay down. As soon as I closed my eyes, I heard a voice in my ear say, "Don't worry, we are here." It was so real I felt the breath in my ear. It was insane. For the next 6 months there would be a light knocking at my bedroom door every night at around 2 AM. It was a knock, as if someone was trying to see if you were awake, but didn't want to wake you if you were. I would always call out yes or "Who's there?" Every time I went to open the door, no one was there. And this wasn't exclusive to just me. I would have dates over, and they would hear it too. This was every night for a solid 6 months. One day I was getting into the bed and there was this dark shadow in the corner of my room rocking back and forth. It freaked me out. This shadow was blacker than anything I had ever seen, and it was swaying. Nothing in my room created that shadow. It made me incredibly uneasy. The next morning I decided to tell my mom and dad. My mom jumped up and said that the same thing was happening to her. As we were talking about it, the back door sling opened and slammed shut. And this was crazy because this door was pretty difficult to work. You had to pull the handle all the way up to disengage it to open. After that happened there was no more knocking and no more shadows. I did some research and it turned out that ghosts tend to wander in from the woods. We live next to a wooded area, so there's that explanation. I have 3. This happened a year or 2 ago. I was sleeping and I had a dream about my brother who had passed away 10 years earlier. This was a pretty normal occurrence and anyone who has lost a family member will probably have similar stories of remembrance dreams. Anyways, I was dreaming about my brother who had passed away. During the dream he said, "You've got to go now," and he touched me on my upper arm near my shoulder. I instantly woke up and I was wide awake. I got up and went to the bathroom. I looked in the mirror and got a chill. There on my upper arm, near my shoulder, was the first letter of his first name written backwards in pen on my arm in the exact place he had touched me in my dream. I have zero history of sleepwalking. I keep my bedroom door locked. The bathroom was down the hall, and I have no pens in my room. They are down the hall in another room that I keep locked at night, and I checked. The pens were all there, and no pens in my room. I've told this story before, and people wonder why I didn't get a photo. Well, something about it didn't feel right and I wanted it gone, so I removed it as quickly as I could without thinking. Funny thing, my shoulder was cold where the letter was. It warmed back up after I washed the letter off. Second story. This happened back in 2010. My uncle had passed away from cancer. About a month later, my aunt, his wife, was looking for something of his. I think it was a tool. He was very well known in the family for his extensive tool collection and how he kept them very organized and cleaned. Anyways, she couldn't find this one tool. She kept looking and looking. A few days go by, she gets a phone call. The woman on the other end of the call says, "You don't know me, but I used to work with your husband years ago. I want you to know that I'm sorry for your loss and that your late husband has visited me. He also wanted me to tell you that he knows what you are looking for and here is where it is." She then told my aunt exactly where the tool was. This woman had never been to their house. My aunt did not know her, and my uncle had never mentioned her. Story 3. This was back in 2000. My paternal grandfather was terminally ill and was in the last few weeks of his life. My father and him had spent several weeks going through his financial and insurance documents to get all of affairs in order. Some of the more important documents were in my grandfather's safe. My grandfather was old and feeble and couldn't get this safe open, neither could my dad. My grandfather in his younger days had been a locksmith and had built his own specialized locks for all his safes. These were not your ordinary locks and required a special finesse or trick to get them open. My father and grandfather tried and tried, but could not unlock this safe. A week or 2 passed, and so did my grandfather. He passed away in the morning, and later that day my father was back at his house with my grandmother and other family members. At some point that evening, he went down into the basement where the safe was, as discovered that the safe was sitting wide open and the papers were on the top of the contents inside. No one called a locksmith. I doubt your average locksmith could get this open. My grandfather was so good at locksmithing. He was employed by the CIA in the 1950s and specialized in locksmithing and surreptitious entry. So this lock wasn't just something that could be chimneyed open by my grandmother or someone else. So yeah, these are the 3 big ones for me. I could also talk about how my sister and I had the same dream about my brother who passed away on the exact same night. I could also talk about how she had a lucid dream one night and came face to face with him in the middle of it, and how he got angry that she had found him and that she wasn't supposed to be there because it wasn't her time, and he snapped his fingers and she woke up. So yeah, believe me or don't, all I know is the universe is mysterious. Who knows what will be uncovered about what the veil is and what lies beyond in the future. Okay, I have said this before on my own r/AskReddit post, but nobody saw it, so I will copy and paste. It isn't the best explained post, but it works. I want to start this off with my story. Around 2017 I was staying at my grandma's old house before she moved. I was there alone because my mom was at my grandma's new house with my sister and everyone else. This house had been known to have like a haunting presence, and there have been many sightings/odd things that went on there. I didn't know of this until after though, and quite frankly I didn't believe in ghosts or any paranormal activity. Now on to what happened. I was in the kitchen about to make some food, and I hear an odd noise in the garage. The garage is right next to the kitchen and there is like a laundry room in between it. All of a sudden, in the walls I hear an odd noise. It was like as if a lot of things were falling down. It was like if someone knocked over a giant toolbox, which he had in the garage, and a ton of things were falling. I thought some tool, as my grandpa is a mechanic and has a lot of tools in the garage, so I'll let it slide. The door is locked, by the way. Then it happens again for a good 10 seconds and I'm just frozen. Confused, as I thought someone broke into the house. I grabbed the biggest knife in the kitchen and ran into the back of the house. I was scared. I stayed there for a few minutes confused on what happened. Eventually I went back and I looked through the front door, then I just looked outside to see if there were any cars. I thought maybe it was just my grandpa. Nothing. Nobody was there. So I go outside, crappy reception in the house, and call my mom. I told her that I just heard someone break into the house or something like that, and that a ton of tools fell down, like as if someone was in there. My mom's sister then told me that it was most likely Eddie. She is a bit funny, and she named the supposed ghost in the house because again that has been sighted before, and they just kind of dealt with it. So an hour later they come over and we go into the garage. Nothing was changed. It was all in the toolbox. Everything was neat. No damage was done. It is one of the craziest things that I cannot explain that I have experienced. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.